One of the big issues heading into the federal election will be the cost of living crisis. It has dominated headlines and it's dominating your life, and there doesn't seem to be a solution in sight. For many, it's breaking point, and it's why homelessness has featured quite heavily in focus groups conducted by Redbridge Group. And the question is, am I next? So for more on this, I'm joined by Simon Welsh. He's a director at Redbridge. Simon, great to talk to you. So in what context are people talking about homelessness? Did they believe that they are just one step away from that?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. It's an issue that has been coming up quietly over the past year in our groups, and just sort of in the last few weeks, it's really started to spike up in terms of discussion. People are seeing it. They're seeing it in their communities. They're driving down the streets, whether they're in the west of Melbourne or the southeast of Queensland or regional centres in between. They are seeing people living in tents. They are seeing people on the street doing it rough, doing it hard. And what's fascinating is a couple of things around that. One, as you sort of alluded to, absolutely, they look at that and they see that as a marker of sort of a broader economic decline. They don't blame those people for the situation they're in. They're looking at it and going, geez, there but for the grace of God, I could be next. It's a signal to them of economic decline. And because they're not blaming those people for that situation, who are they blaming? They are blaming government. And I think I just sort of want to make the really simple and obvious points in some way, that it's hard as a government to fight that kind of everyday signal that's going to people. Every time they drive down the street, they are seeing this, and it is reminding them of the state of the economy. It's reminding them of government failure. That's what they're talking about in the group. This is government failure that has led to us. So, I think the idea that there's some magical campaign solution to this, that there's some magical communication solution to this, is fanciful. And this is why you'll hear sort of myself and others from Redbridge talking about the very difficult time that we think that the Labor government has from here when people are seeing these kinds of signals every single day.
Is it because they expected more from them? They expected Labor to get their struggles more than they appear to? Because, today our headline, Simon, we're talking about cost of living, of course, we're talking about people struggling to pay their power bills. 135,000 people are now on the list of hardship. At the same time, we keep on being told that renewables are the cheapest form of energy. It's also 3 years since the government promised $275 off their power bills, and here we are, 3 years later, power bills on average are $2,000.
Yeah, look, I think that the deeper, broader point there is correct, in the sense that we're talking about where this homelessness is, where these people are living in tents. These are communities that are by and large historical, strong Labor communities. These are red wall seats. And what we've been seeing over, and you and I have discussed this many times, over a long, long period of time, is this sense of neglect by Labor, by both parties. But as you rightly say, Labor was the one that was supposed to look after them. They've voted for Labor. They are Labor people. They are Labor communities. Labor should have looked after them. And for a long time now, we've been watching this neglect. And we've been watching the support, the primary vote particular for Labor in these areas has been declining for a long period of time. And the question we've been asking ourselves is, at what point does it hit that tipping point? At what point is too much, is enough too much sort of thing? What is that signal? And I suspect that we are looking at that signal now. I think, years of neglect on whether it's public transport or health or whatever it is. In these communities, we know life expectancy is significantly lower in these communities than it is in the wealthier parts of our cities. So I think we're potentially looking at a real tipping point here. I think the electoral political implications of this is that we see seats that were once proud Labor seats fall to either the Liberal Party or to independents, if independents get coordinated and organised in these seats. The ingredients are certainly there, but I think it's different this time. I think this driving down the street on a daily basis and seeing people in tents is that tipping point that for a lot of proud Labor voters, historical Labor voters that have stuck with them through the years, I think this is the signal that their party has kind of let them down.
Last election, I think it was more of a climate change election. Certainly that motivated young people. This election is absolutely 100% a cost of living election. When it comes to the cost of power, reliability of power in the context of climate change. How are people bringing that up in the groups?
Yeah, energy is a really interesting area. It's not black and white. People actually have pretty nuanced views around this stuff. So most people, and I mean a strong majority of people, are certainly pro-renewable. They like the promise of renewable on environmental grounds, but they don't necessarily see renewables as being cheaper, but nor do they necessarily see them as being more expensive. There's this kind of sense that, well, whether we went renewable or whether we went nuclear, the same big companies are going to be controlling this. You know, we're going to get gouged in the same way that we're getting gouged now. So there is this expectation that, you know, energy is just a bad space for the consumer.
What do they think about this $275 promise that the government made 3 years ago? Are they still, you know, holding out for that? Do they think it's a broken promise?
Even at the time that those sorts of things were launched, the time for Band-Aids had passed. And that is purely what this gets seen as. You know, $275, that's great. That covers one trip to the shopping centre.
And it hasn't even happened.
Do the groceries. Exactly. We can't even deliver a Band-Aid.
Wow, okay, it's going to be quite an election and we don't even know what independents will come out of the woodwork. Simon, I really appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Laura.